Ooh, there we go. How good was that? It's nice to have a bit of lighthearted fun and to see some insight into some of our regular comers here. Hey, we're going to have a panel now with our guest speakers and also with our very own pastors, Jason and Michelle. So if you want to give them a hand as they come up, would you join me? Are you enjoying it today? I'm really enjoying it. I've got to say, Alana, my pen nearly caught on fire. I was writing that many notes for you. But I ended up just switching from words into pictures. So now I've just got a whole heap of pictures in here. So let's just hope I can remember what's going on. So firstly, Artie and Alana, thank you for coming and investing into us. We really appreciate it. And thanks for sharing your insight and your experience. And I'm sure a lot of us have already got a lot out of today. So I just want to ask a few questions just on some of the stuff we're talking about. And I think I'd like to just start with one that's just probably just to satisfy my own curiosity. Artie, is Artie short for something?
Is this on? Check. 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1, 2. Artie is short. I like to tell people it's short for Artaxerxes, but it's not. It's short for Arthur.
Arthur, yeah, okay,
Arthur.
Right, there you go.
But I used to meet people all the time, and I might have spoken to them on the phone, and then I'd meet them in person, and they'd say, "Oh, I was expecting a much older person." Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned
Alana never calls me Artie. She always calls me Arthur.
Arthur, okay. All right, that's good. I'll remember that. I caught something that you said earlier about your daughters and that there was maybe some boys chasing after them and that they'd taken on a similar approach to Alana. So I want to know, how long did it take you to snag Alana? And did you use the same method as you did with the cricket team?
Pretty much. That's where I learnt the skills to then get into the cricket chaplaincy. Alana was my training ground. We met. I was 15, she was 14. And like I said, I asked her out continually. She said no continually, to the point where she said, the answer is no. It will always be no. Don't ever ask me again. And then a few years later, so it would have been, 6 years later, we randomly reconnected at a friend's connect group that neither of us went to. We just both happened to go there that night just to visit people, and we just got chatting, and I had to look up her number in the phone book, 991-380. I still remember that, and we just got talking from there, and she's only human, so she had to come around sometime.
Everyone has their limit. That's great. Well, let's start. I just want to start with some questions for the single people that are here today. And I just want to, this is for the whole panel, so I'll leave the questions open, and anybody that wants to answer, just jump in and answer first in. I'd like you to just consider yourself when you were single. Your single self, go back for you guys, 25 years? Jason, Michelle, how long has it been? Have you guys been married for now?
27.
27 years. So what advice would you give your single self if you could go back and give yourself some advice? Or what is something that you'd wish someone maybe had told you when you were single?
Cut my mullet earlier.
What was that? Cut your mullet off earlier?
I left my mullet on far too long. But I think that's what won my wife over. I just conditioned it that day and she saw my mullet waving in the breeze.
It's definitely not the mullet.
I thought it was all those years. Wow. Shattered. I didn't mean to answer, just trying to tell you a joke. I think Alana's got a great answer for that.
We were so young when we got married, I probably would give advice that I'm giving my 23-year-old now, maybe. And a couple of things that I say to my girls, especially all the time, is whoever you are now, you're a whole person. I really don't like those phrases like my better half or you complete me, all these romantic things that are in songs and things, because you're a whole person as you are. So don't put off things until you find your partner. Do whatever you want to do now as a whole single person. You're not waiting for someone to complete you. Because if a relationship breaks down for whatever reason, you don't then lose half of yourself. You're still who you are. So pursue what God's got on your life, and the person is going to be on that path. It's not like, oh, I'm following God until I see this guy over here, until this is happening over here, until maybe I'll deviate there because there's someone over there. It's like I'm on my path, I'm following God, I'm putting him first, I'm doing what he's called me to do, and then along that path, the most incredible person is going to come along, and they're also going to be on their path, and they're going to be whole, and two whole people make a whole marriage. And so then you'll be together, you'll be in the same way, the same direction, same purpose, and it will just be a magically amazing relationship. And the other thing I say to my girls all the time is, you're no one's plan B. And I love that, because the other day my daughter said it back to me about something, and like if there's somebody who, there was a guy chasing her, and he sort of was chasing someone else as well. And so then it was like, I was like, no. You are no one's plan B. He will be just smitten by you, and that's what So there's a couple of things that I tell my girls all the time.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks.
Yeah, and I springboarding off the first part of what Alana was saying, I think it's Proverbs 18:21, maybe it's 18:22, that says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing and receives treasure from the Lord. And it's this, the picture of that is not, he who goes looking everywhere for a wife, or she who goes looking everywhere for, a husband, or whatever, it's not running around looking for it. But the picture is, as you're on your journey, following God, pursuing what he's got for your life, it's kind of like you're walking along a pathway and you see a $50 note. It's like, oh, look at that. I just add that to my life and I continue on. It's that kind of picture, that it's not going hunting. Right. There's a lot of people going hunting, but it's just get on following Jesus, living the life he's called you to, and it's amazing how right time, right place, God prepares you and prepares the person. I think probably one of the things I would have told myself, my younger single self, would have just been, just relax, slow down. You don't have to be in such a rush with everything. Just, you've got time. You've got more time than you realise. And when you're younger, or if you, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this on Sunday night here as well. But there's almost like there can be this, we were talking basketball, is shot clock pressure. Got to hurry up. I'm going to talk on tomorrow night. I'm going to talk about the day I lost $1 million. I was on Hot Seat Millionaire, and true story, and the day I lost $1 million. I'll show you the video clip from the TV show. But there's this pressure to hurry up before time runs out. And so I think I would have told myself, just slow down, relax. You got time.
Great. Got any more advice for our single selves?
I've got some stuff I'm going to share in the singles lective in a moment. It's going to be amazing. And Andrew as well has got some great stuff. So Andrew and I have got to take that. So I'll save my stuff for that. I just want to mention about that attractiveness. Like don't try and find someone attractive. Be that attractive person. Body, soul, and spirit. And then the right one will come along at the right time. But one thing that really helped me is actually not trying to get ahead of my stages of life. It's not trying to wish I was already there, but enjoy the stage fully. And then when I get to the next stage, I won't regret, I missed that. You don't want to get married and then, I wish I was single again. I've never wished that when I've been married, which is good. And just so you know, Michelle. It's good to know. And but I really enjoyed my single life, and then I know Andrew's got some great stuff to share about those that have been through marriage and coming out and are single again later in life as well. So some good stuff next session as well. But,
I'll just say something really quickly.
Yeah.
Probably it's just, Christian 101 kind of thing, but I made the mistake of dating someone who wasn't equally yoked, a non-Christian, and it doesn't work. It's like for anyone that thinks, I can change them. Yeah, most times, there is the rare occasion, but that was something, that I was always told, and I thought it was good advice because it really started to take me down the wrong path, and then, yes.
he had no mullet, I don't think he
Didn't meet the standard, yeah. It's good. So just building on that idea then, especially from what Artie and Alana was saying, what are your thoughts just on the idea of God having planned a perfect person for you or for anyone here that may have those thoughts?
And that's a funny balancing act, that one. It is a bit of a tightrope because on the one hand, I absolutely feel like Alana is the perfect person for me. But that also doesn't mean that she was the only possible option. Not because I had multiple options, but I just mean that...
Who else were you hanging around and pestering?
You were not my plan B. But I think it's a little bit of it can actually be unhelpful for people to feel like I'm looking for the one, and there is only one person out there that God has intended for me. Because, then we're honing on a it could be a very small set of things we're looking for, whatever it might be. There are actually multiple plan A's. And that's true for every part of our life. We get really stressed about, is this the will of God? Is this house the will of God? Is this job the will of God? Is this city the will of God? Is this relationship the will of God? Well, the will of God is actually more like it's wide open spaces.
Right.
And as long as you're within the boundaries of what God's word says and what wisdom says and the big picture plan and call for your life, all of that is actually the will of God. And so I think sometimes we stress ourselves too much about, is this the perfect one? Well, let's see. Take time, get to know, find out. It might be, and there could be another one that could be great as well.
I would also add to that, say that a lot more emphasis. I think find the right one or the right one for you is important. I'll talk about that with the singles. But even of more importance is when you find someone is building the relationship after you've found the person. It's like even arranged marriages seem to have a high level of working. Not that we're going to do that in this church, but the idea of actually building and the right principles into that relationship. And I feel like it's the same thing in the will of God, like Artie was talking about. Like God may have a perfect, person to, a pastor for a church or a person for a ministry. Sometimes and a call in someone's life, but sometimes people say no to the call of God. And then God will use and raise someone else up and use them and develop them and put a grace upon them. Sometimes if there's a partner that God has for you and it doesn't work out for whatever reason, then God will put a grace on somebody else that you can build and develop into that person as your partner. I think it's almost a grace that God puts on you for a person.
Right.
I feel, and so it's not necessarily the one, but it's a grace. And so for Michelle and I, we found each other, and then God had a grace upon our relationship, and we built hard that relationship over many years to work on it.
Right.
But if Michelle said to me, "I don't want you, mullet man," and I was out of the picture straight away, then I'm sure God will put grace on someone else for Michelle and someone else for me if it happens. Thank God it doesn't happen, but there's a grace that comes upon that, I feel.
Yeah, great. Well, let's move on. For people with kids, there's quite a few people here that have children with them or children in the kids program. So I just wanted you to share experience on just how do we get the balance right between our kids and their commitments. So think of, as they're going through school, perhaps birthday parties or sport is a big one on weekends, and our family and church commitments. So Does one take precedence over the other? What's the balance? How do you find it? Have you got any tips in your experience for negotiating that time of life?
It's a huge question. It's such a huge season of life, isn't it, when you've got everything pulling you in every direction. But for me, I think it comes back to what we were talking about before. If you've got your culture and your values set, then it's really easy to make decisions out of that because you're able to prioritise things. So there's been times in our lives where our kids just know, okay, well, I won't even ask that because I just know it's going to be a no for whatever reason. And then there are times where if it's a one-off thing and it's really out of the ordinary, we will make a way for that to happen if, See, we were really blessed because while our kids were in that really full-on time of life, we were in a church with a lot of different service times. And so it was never do we go to church or do we go to this? We could do both. And majority of the time, probably even here, you can do both. It may cost you a little bit more of your day, but you can usually do both. And so I often have looked at it, it's not either or, but somehow making it a win for everybody. Our son played really high-level cricket, which takes a lot of hours out of your week. And so I would try and make that a win for him and a win for my daughters. So I'd try and figure out things that we could do while he was there. And so it's not that all of our attention and time went into him and our girls missed out, but you just got to think out of the box, think creative, think according to your culture and your values, have boundaries around it, but it sounds terrible, but try and do it all. You probably are going to be able to hit all of the marks if it's really important.
Yeah, I think it's, like you're saying, there'll be a cost in it. So for large chunks of time, when our son was playing all his rep cricket and everything that was happening, so, he was in a cricket academy on Friday nights, so he couldn't be at our Friday night service or at youth. And then he was playing all day Saturday and then be all day Sunday, and that would go for 12 weeks at a time. So that meant we just had to be super intentional about making sure that he would be in his youth connect group still. And that might mean we would have to drive 40 minutes to get to wherever that connect group was. And then you've got to sit there because there's no point going home because you just got to come back again. So, we go and do something together or meet up with people, or sometimes it was just sit in the car and wait. But it's worth it to keep that connectedness happening for him so that he's still getting that input and he's still part of church life while also still being able to pursue, something else that was happening. So it's a balancing act, and it took a little bit of time to find the rhythm of that, but being willing to do whatever we could to try and make it all happen.
Yeah, that's great.
For us, obviously, you guys as well, but having pastors' kids, we wanted to make sure that our kids knew that they came first before the church, and that if they needed us, we were there for them. And we found involving our kids in church life, making them feel like they're a part of it. It's not just mum and dad, but it's us as a family. We're doing this together. We're in ministry together. And even little things like, I know one Sunday night, Jason actually took off and took Jaden to go watch the Broncos because they both love the Broncos.
Grand final.
It was and just that, I think that spoke volumes that,
It was for him.
that he put that time into it. So, I just think involving your kids, getting their heart, where are they at? And they'll, we even asked our kids recently, did you ever feel like you missed out, because mum and dad are pastors, or did you find it difficult? And both of them said no. We always felt loved. We always felt like you'd put us first and you involved us. So that was really good.
Our kids always knew that we loved church. They always knew that. I went to all their sporting stuff that they went to as much as I possibly could. That's one of the good things about being a pastor. You can manoeuvre your schedule around their sporting stuff. Even stuff that no other parent turned up, I was there. There's that guy there and watching this random sport thing at school because I was just determined to be there for them in their sporting things, different areas. But it was really important that they know that it was also church was really a high priority for us, the call of God. Just on a quick note, I believe that there's two parts to our lives, and we've got to not be careful not to make too many parts. Like, we got kids and home and family and church. It's just God and God's call. That's it in my mind. And so God's first in everything. Always put God first in everything. And then God's call represents, hey, God's called me to be a husband. He's called me to be a father. He's called me to be a pastor. He's called me to be whatever else. And that's all God's call. It's all in the same bracket. It's what focus and what part of God's call does God want me to focus on today or in this moment? Because it's all God's call. It's not like God's call's the church and my family is not God's call. That's just as much God's call being a father and a husband as it is being a pastor. It's all God's call for my life. So that's why. Help me.
I'll just add to that. I remember growing up in church and hearing people talk about, the priorities of your life, and it's God first, and then it's your marriage, and then it's your family, and then it's work, and then it's your church, and then it's your hobbies and your interests, and it's like this hierarchy like this. The problem with that is that something's always going to miss out. It's you're never going to be able to give, if it's God first, God only, if it's God first, well, I'm never going to be able to give enough time. There's always more time I feel like I should give to God. And so, and then if it's, what's next is my marriage, well, I'm never going to, there's always more I could do. And so then it filters down and it's missing out all the way. Where maybe a better picture of it is it's a seesaw, it's a balance, and there are seasons where, we know it's going to be tipped more in favor of a work season, for example. There might be a lot happening, and we know, but then we're aware of that season, so then we'll tip it back, and then it'll be no to some of that, and it's yes to more of, it's family time or it's whatever over here, and it's just this constant balance rather than, I'm feeling guilty all the time because I'm never able to give enough to each rung on the ladder, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we've got a little bit of time left, so I want to move on to married people. So each person has their relationship with God. And a lot of, I feel blessed in my marriage that Mickey and I stand side by side, believing in God and what He's going to do in our life. But that's not the case for everyone. So what's some ways for those that may be here and their partner's not here, or they're in church, their partner's not in church, that they're married to? What's some ways that you could maybe suggest that they could encourage their partners along with God in that journey for those people?
I have, look, one of the greatest examples for me was my grandmother, and my grandmother found Jesus. My grandfather was not a Christian at all. That's my dad's mother, they were moved from England to New Zealand, and she just fell in love with Jesus completely. Fell in love with Jesus, totally sold out, and to the point where my grandfather got really jealous of Jesus, because my grandmother loved Jesus, felt like more than him, and he's suddenly the second man in the picture all of a sudden, and to the point that they had three teenage kids. And he left her in New Zealand and went back to England, other side of the world. Just left her alone as a single mother in that regard. And so she thought, wow. And so it got to the point, she was there for a year or two, and it got to the point where God told her to go and win your husband back. So she actually went back, flew back to England, left the kids behind for a few months, and just sat there with them. And there's times when, instead of trying to do the old, manipulation of, find a scripture under my pillow, or whatever it is, it was actually just hearing God's voice and just loving first, being a wife, and then God worked through her. So he actually, one time it was time to go to church, and he's into soccer because he's English. So everyone in English loves football or soccer, and the game was on, and she sat down and was time to go to church. She sat down and watched the game with him.
Right.
And he goes, "What are you doing?" You're supposed to be going. He says, "I just want to spend time with you." And it goes, really? And it sort of softened his heart, and eventually got to the point where they got back together. He flew back to New Zealand. They family got reunited again, and eventually he gave his heart to Jesus a number of years later. But eventually gave his heart to Jesus close to the end of his life, and then from there my dad became a pastor. I became a pastor. My auntie and uncle, they were pastors in ministry, and as a generation come from the matriarch, was my grandmother who pioneered the way, and unsung hero, Yeah. But she prioritized her marriage in that season. So just an interesting example.
Yeah, it's a great example. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing because I've watched it in my parents' marriage. It's a very similar story. They weren't Christians when they got married. They divorced when I was 5. And then both of them independently became Christians and felt like God spoke to each of them to rebuild your family again. So they remarried each other again when I was 11 or 12. So I was the flower girl at my mum and dad's wedding. And they hadn't changed their last name, so it sounded like they were marrying their brother and sister. It's because they were legally divorced and then remarried again. And they were both Christians then, but then Dad stopped wanting to be part of church and even probably a Christian for many, many, many years. And so watching Mum do everything from preach at him to get angry to love to release and because you do all the human things that you would do because you want your spouse to be on the same page. And so watching it all, but I agree, I think the thing that probably it did win in the end was just loving him, putting him as a priority as well, and letting him walk out his own faith journey and come around to it himself. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
That's great. Well, that's good. I had probably twice as many questions as what we ended up getting through, but we've got our electives coming up straight after this. So why don't you give the panel a round of applause? Thank you for coming.
Oh, we didn't get to hear the story of you guys' first kiss at the cinema. No, you missed out. That would have been. That was going to be a great moment to share that with the church.
It would have been so fantastic. Anyway, not to worry.
So it's marriage in here and singles out there, is that right? Okay. Well, thank you very much, panel. Sorry, I was just getting back up to... give another round of applause. Thank you.